Hello. Yes, it actually is a Confessions podcast. That's what this is. Thank you very much indeed for downloading us. We've got some good stories coming up. More sinful tales from the Radio 2 listener. All begging and bowing and scraping in front of our collective. This week's Concise Collection features. I've got no idea why this alliteration thing happens, but it's just fun, okay? Frozen food factory tomfoolery. 3 out of 4. A partner's passport prank, 3 out of 3. A risky racing road trip, that's all right. And naughty nuisance neighbourhood nippers. Very nice. Here's Alan in Newcastle doing his big confession. Alan, thank you very much indeed. Send yours to confessions@bbc.co.uk. Father, Son and the Collective, I'm not sure if I qualify for forgiveness, as I'm still laughing as I put this to paper, but I'm going to give it my best shot. In 1984, I was working as a maintenance engineer in a frozen food factory. It was not unusual when innocently fixing things that needed fixing for someone to accidentally blast you with water from one of the hoses supplied for hygiene. Bet that was hilarious. On this particular Saturday, I was working overtime in the morning and attending the Newcastle United match later in the afternoon, then rounding it off with a social drink with my workmates and partners. The new lad, called John, had just returned to the UK from Australia, decided it would be funny to blast me with icy cold water whilst I was stuck upside down repairing a machine. Well, I freed myself from my tight corner, I grabbed the nearest hose and I chased John. He got away, but unknowingly dropped his money, which was £30 in notes, which was his money for the match and the pre-match drinks. It was a long time ago. I picked it up and I scurried back to our workshop to tell the rest of the lads. John comes in, he's distraught, and announced that, unfortunately, because he's lost his money, he wouldn't be able to attend the match and he wouldn't be able to buy any drinks. During the rest of the shift, I and the other 2 lads toured the factory, changing John's £30 into the smallest denominations possible. By the end of the shift, we had piles and piles and piles of copper coins and a few little silver ones. Near the end of the shift, we gathered together and told John that we'd held a collection to replace his missing money. He was incredulous. His eyes watered, his bottom lip quivered, whilst promising that he would never ever forget this. "You're my best mates ever," he blubbed. "No one has ever done anything this nice for me, not ever." So, with everybody happy, we went to the local transport system, which is the Newcastle Metro, and purchased our tickets, £1 to the city centre. Everyone apart from John, who had to pay in coppers. 1p, and then 2p, then the odd 5p. He got to 98p and the machine rejected all his coins. Too many coins, or the machine had timed out. I'm not quite sure which. Anyway, we're back to square one. John had to go to the station shop and ask to reconvert some copper coins back into silver, and he started counting them out. 1, 3, 4, 5, and so on, much to the dismay of the lady on the other side of the counter and the anger of the queue forming behind him. In the pub for pre-match drinks, John, still full of positive emotion, ordered some beers, his treat, and I'm sure the barman would not have served him if he knew that he too was going to have to wait for John to count it all at £2.80, different times, entirely in coppers, 1, 3, 4, and so on. Anyway, we got the drinks in just before the match started. Trying to enter the match, as was normal at the time, we were searched, and John had to convince the policeman, took a long time, he wasn't intending to throw the coins at the opposition. Anyway, he managed to do that as well. We all went home after the game and later met at the local with our partners, where John's wife told us how John had relayed the story of our kindness, and then they both started crying. To top it all off, she said that they'd been around the world and they had now eventually found the nicest people, and they were in Newcastle. To this day, they don't know. No, we're not actually the nicest people, and that actually it was his money that we'd handed back, just in much lower denominations. So I'm not asking for John's forgiveness, as this would never have happened if he hadn't used the water hose. I'm asking forgiveness from the people stuck in the queue behind John in all the establishments that he counted out his change in, the lady in the station shop, the queue waiting to be served, the barman, and also from John's wife. In hope, Alan in Newcastle on time, and they have just learned for the first time that they weren't being the nicest people. Oh, I'm sure they are the nicest people, but But in this particular case, it was all a scam. It was his own money that they'd changed. Ha ha, laughs for a while. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
Who knew that a pocket full of change could be so troublesome? But I think that's a great little jape to play on John, because
No, on
it was.
Alan. He's Alan.
Yeah, but Alan played the joke on
yes,
John.
That's right.
Because
Well done.
not only did he get all his money back, but they had a laugh as well. He didn't find out about it until now. So I think it's great. I'm sure when John finds out about it, he'll have a laugh too. And it's very sweet story. They've cried.
He's going to reassess
They
the
both
way he's
cried.
looking at his mates, though.
No, I'm sure he's got a good sense of humour.
all
So
right.
you're forgiven.
Sister Bobby, what did you say?
Yeah, they didn't take the money, did they? He could have just gone, oh, I've got £30. This is Alan. I'll keep that in my back pocket, you cheeky little monkey, for freezing me with water. And I could have fallen off in that machine and become a wristole or a fish finger. So I actually think he got his... What he did is...
Rissoles. I haven't heard rissoles mentioned for a
Yeah,
while.
there you
I could
go.
have become a rissole. Well, that's great. Look at that. It's a positive end to the day.
Well, as I said, so he's, they gave the money back in a much kind of cheekier way. Actually, I think it'd have been lovely if they'd have told him eventually, because actually they could have kept the money. So they're still really nice people, but he did need a lesson. So there you go, absolutely forgiven.
Was that like a meaty fish cake? Or like a meat
It was
cake?
chicken. It's like a chicken burger, I think, a rissole.
Chicken in inverted commas. Brother Matt, have you ever had rissoles?
No. Now, what is the problem with shops? I've worked behind a bar and I've worked in shops. What is the problem with people taking lots of change? I was always very happy if someone came to me with lots of change, because the float in the till would be reimbursed by me having lots of more 2p's and 1p's and 5p's. So I wonder about these shops that are turning their noses up at someone trying to pay in pennies. What's the big problem? My other thought here is, what is this with bursting into tears just because people are nice? Get a grip, please. So for that reason alone, I am not going to forgive.
Here we go, ready for tonight's, which comes from Jack. Thank you very much indeed, Jack, for this. Dear Simon and the other members of the reconvened colonial court, I'm writing to confess a misdeed of mine. I'm not sure how this is going to go. My guess is no chance. I was born in the United States, but I moved to the UK when I was 7. I've married a nice British girl. Not long after the birth of our first child, I have received news that made it urgent for me to return to the United States. My American passport expired, but my mum always told me I had British citizenship, so I decided to apply for an emergency British passport so I could leave. The nice lady at the passport office proceeded to ask me a few questions, and we quickly determined that I was not a UK citizen at all. I started to feel concerned as to the legality of my UK residence. The next day I called the appropriate government office from my office at work and established that I did, after all, have the right to live and work in the UK. Much relief as far as I was concerned. However, this is not what I told my wife. When I got home, I told her that as I had married her stating I was a British citizen, and I wasn't, our marriage was in effect invalid.
Is that a joke then? Like a ha-ha? Right.
No. Our marriage is invalid. It's null and void, just like Henry VIII, but without all the related nastiness. She was, as you English say, a little bit miffed. So we're not married then, she says. No, I say. So we're not even slightly married? No, not even slightly. She thought about it. So you could just walk away, she says, thinking it through. Well, yes, I say, but I wouldn't. Then she says,
Oh, no.
so I could just walk
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Yes, but you wouldn't, would you? I clearly hadn't thought this through completely. I needed to act swiftly. So this is what I seek forgiveness for, Father Simon. I told her that we would have to get married again, but for real this time. So I'm really going for it. She was then concerned that her dad would be angry and not give permission again, because, to be frank, it was quite difficult getting it the first time round. I confess I let this play for a very, very long time. In fact, still going.
What?
I say, yes, we need another venue, more invites, a different wedding list, all discussed. Mother-in-law's been called. You can imagine the scene. So, says Jack. I mean, I know I perform a useful function here occasionally. Can I get you to say that I am indeed a UK citizen, that we are in fact married, that we don't have to hire Danny's Disco and Light Show again, we are okay, and I'm very sorry for putting you through this, my darling wife.
So basically everything has been now arranged, and he's now going on national radio and saying...
Well, I suspect that
no,
he
it was a bit
hasn't...
of a joke, actually.
But you can imagine that mother-in-law is going to go, what? Dad is going to go, no.
Never liked him anyway.
No.
Never liked him anyway. If you've got a chance, get out now. But anyway, so I suppose that's Jack's idea of a joke.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I thought jokes had to be funny. I never understand jokes that aren't funny. Anyway, I think... How
Do
long
you
has this been... What?
Do you not find it totally hilarious?
No.
What a prank that is.
Some
Guess
prank.
what? We're not married.
Zany.
Really? Bye.
How long did it go on for, do you think? Months? Weeks? I think Jack's been playing with fire here. I mean, his wife could have just walked off at any moment. Not just after she heard that she didn't have to stay, but also after the whole kind of having to rearrange the wedding and pay for the marquee and the disco and all that. And it does sound like the father-in-law wasn't particularly fond of him. So the father-in-law could have just said, no, now that I know you better, I'm not going to do it. So I think he was really risking it. And I don't think it's very funny. So I'm not going to forgive. Sorry.
Okay, Jack, I think you're going to be struggling here. Sister Bobby now is looking stern.
You big twit. You really did take a risk, because she could have just gone, thanks, brilliant, I'm out of here. Always wanted to get out, and now you've just made it so easy. Bye. So you big idiot that way, because you only thought about yourself
Jack,
there.
big idiot.
Well, you did. You thought, oh, I could walk away. You never thought for a minute that she could go, that's it, it's over, I can get out. But the other thing, actually, that's you an idiot on that side of
Jack.
it. Idiot. But what I won't forgive you
Just
for...
so it's clear.
What I won't forgive you for is you didn't then go and turn it into a lovely romantic gesture and go, come on, let's reconfirm our vows and go and get somewhere and do something lovely. You just went, oh, it's a big joke. It's a shame you are married.
Idiot.
She could just
Radio
walk
as
away.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, idiot Jack. What do you
Not
think?
forgiven, you big idiot.
Well, I mean, obviously nobody here is standing up for Jack. So if I were to sort of play
Let's hear it
devil's...
for Jack.
I mean, it was a joke and probably it went on a bit too long. But what he was after was just this, the romantic gesture of let's have a wedding again. Let's have that. What a wonderful day that was. Do you remember that day? Oh, it was so good. Let's do it all again.
Because your dad was so enthuistic
Your
first
dad,
time.
Yeah, I remember he had a big frown on his face. Let's have a big smile from Daddy-in-law. And but unfortunately he's ruined that by now going on national radio and saying it was all a crazy joke. So for that reason, not forgiven.
This one comes from Anna, who's in Benfleet, in Essex. Dear Bishop Mayo and his councillors, I have to confess something that has been on my mind for many years. In 2002, I flew from my home in rural North Wales to America to visit a friend I had met through that newfangled thing called the internet. My friend, Kerry, lived in Arizona and turned out to be every bit as delightful in person as she'd seen from the emails. She took me to Phoenix Zoo, Whiskey Row in Prescott, Taco Bell, and various other wonderful tourist attractions in Arizona. Is Taco Bell actually count as...
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's not a tourist attraction,
Well,
is it,
no,
particularly?
strictly speaking. But...
And various other wonderful things. After a few days, however, Kerry decided that I needed to see more of the wonderful US of A, and we decided to embark on the Great American Road Trip. Kerry's elderly mother owned an ancient beige Cadillac, which she was happy to let us borrow for our trip. It was a huge monster of a car, with a walnut dashboard and lots of angular gleaming chrome. I had never seen or driven anything like it before. So as we cruised along the wide desert highway towards Las Vegas, Kerry, who was driving, said, would I like to drive for a while? Well, naturally, I jumped at the chance. We pulled over, swapped seats, and I set off. Kerry gave me a brief précis of the rules of the road in that part of the US. She explained particularly that I should watch my speed, because if we were given a ticket, it had to be paid immediately at the nearest police station, which could be quite a distance out of our way. Well, unfortunately, I paid absolutely no attention to a word that she said, and so therefore, just a few miles along the road, I flew past a hiding traffic cop who switched on his blue lights and pulled us over. This time, Kerry had my complete attention as she explained the gravity of our situation. I won't do the voice. Plenty of that in a minute. Remember, she says, cops here have guns. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't get out of the car unless he tells you to. Keep both hands on the wheel where he can see them. Don't say anything unless he asks a question. In fact, now I come to think of it, let me handle this. So the cop walks over, leans down, talks to me and asks for my driver's license. As I fumbled for it, Kerry apologised on my behalf. I'm sorry, officer. Oh, no.
You can't help yourself. Cannot help yourself.
Do you like that? Yeah. She's visiting from overseas, and I don't think I properly explained what the speed limit is.
It's Miss Piggy.
I know it's Penelope Pitstop's sister.
I mutely handed over my pink EU driving licence, and the cop went back to his vehicle to check it. We can picture this because we've seen it in like 1,000 movies. A minute later, the cop was back. But this time, he came to the passenger side and addressed Kerry. Simon, you'll need a Spanish-American accent here. I don't think I can do this.
Okay.
La, 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 la. I'm not gonna... No, okay, look, I'll mark this, Matt. You speak Spanish, so we need this. You're a cop. You're speaking to Kerry.
Okay.
We need a Spanish-American accent.
But we're saying this in English.
Yes, it's in English.
I'm gonna let this go. Well, could you explain to your friend she's very lucky? Could you tell her she needs to drive more slowly in the future?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, it was better than what I was going to do. He handed Kerry my licence. She nodded furiously, uttering heartfelt thanks, and we drove away very slowly. I was marvelling at our lucky escape from a $200 fine and the requirement to drive 50 miles back the way we'd come when Kerry discovered why we had been so fortunate. She was looking at my bilingual driving licence and reading from it my address. You might remember right at the start of this confession, she's from North Wales. So at the time, my home was an old stone house near the top of a very pretty mountain in the heart of the Welsh North Wales. So my address, this is what it says. This is what the cop would have seen. And obviously at this point, I'm just going to hand over to Lynn Bowles, who earlier recorded the address. Right?
Wow.
So this is what's on Anna's driving licence.
Fainol Fawr, Llysfaen, Pwllheli, Gwynedd.
Okay. So there's... how did that cop sound again?
Very much like these.
And he's reading...
Fainol Fawr, Llysfaen, Pwllheli, Gwynedd.
Now, it's quite possible, says Anna, that he'd never heard of Llysfaen or Pwllheli or Gwent, and it's quite likely that this Arizona cop hadn't even heard of Wales. I think he didn't realise that you spoke English, she says. He probably didn't want to handle the paperwork. So we drove to Las Vegas without further incident, and from there to California, and from there to Salt Lake City. And generally, we had a wonderful time. But I feel I should apologise to the Arizona Police Department for speeding, don't do this at home, kids, and defrauding them out of $200 by inadvertently pretending to be a foreigner, and because I lived here.
Fainol Fawr, Llysfaen, Pwllheli, Gwynedd.
I hope they and the bishopric can find it in their hearts to forgive me. Well, I think that was accent-tastic, wasn't it? All the way, we had some really convincing... We were painting pictures with words. That was a true Breathian confession. Anyway, Sister Rebecca, what do you say to Anna, who cheated the Arizona Police Department out of $200?
Such an international confession. I absolutely loved it. I was transported to the Arizona desert, then back to North Wales, and then back to Arizona again. That was just a joy to listen to. And not as much, though, as Matt's Spanish, Mexican... policeman person. That was just classic.
There's a Speedy Gonzales joke in there somewhere, isn't there?
Yes.
I'm going to forgive.
Okay, Anna, that's one for you. Sister Bobby, who, of course, is very stern on all matters to do with speeding.
I am, but you see, when you're in a different country and you're trying to remember all the different rules and the reduced speed limit, and you're on a long open road and you think you're on the M6 with no congestion, you can kind of see how it kind of just
because it really
tipped.
sounded like the M6, didn't it?
Well, that's it. It's normally you can't put you can't even get the national speed limit. I'm going to say that what a lovely, lovely policeman, and really because in good nature, and he was really good natured. He could have just given the big ticket.
He was lazy. He looked to the eyes. I don't want to write that down.
Actually, no. He was going. In the interests of international relations, I can let you go. You're forgiven.
It would be quite good if we had a Spanish-American cop to actually have a go at speaking Welsh.
Yes.
Yes, but maybe I shouldn't ask you to do that.
No, definitely
so,
not.
What do you say, Brother Matthew, then?
Well, I'm very much going to go with the only reason that this policeman isn't writing it down is because he doesn't quite understand what's going on in front of him as far as the spelling and all that's concerned. So I would say that's a bit lazy, and that really this policeman should have been, enforcing the law. So for that reason, I am going to forgive.
Not forgive.
Not forgive. Well done, yes. That definitely followed the logic. Well done. Yeah. Made sense.
So here's tonight's confession. It comes from Louise. Louise, thank you very much indeed for tonight's tale. Dear Simon and the hopefully ever forgiving collective, hearing the tale of sibling rivalry in the confession the other evening took me back to an incident in my childhood for which I feel the need for absolution. Back in the 60s, my brother Andy and I would happily play in the street early evening and all day during school holidays with about 10 other children of the neighbourhood. Andy was 2 years older than me and liked to get his own way. To put it bluntly, he was a bit of a bully, and I really did not like him very much. The old lady who lived next door to us, let's call her Mrs. Brown, was often the victim of our games of knock-down ginger and used to shout at us and shake her fist as we ran off. And one day she called out, "I've had enough of you lot! If you do that again, I'm going to call the police and you will all go to prison." Terry Jones.
It is, isn't it?
Is.
Oh,
he's
yes.
not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Could the policeman be an American Spanish
No.
cop, Hispanic cop?
No, he's getting ideas above his station. Anyway, this set a seed in my 9-year-old brain and I started to form a plan. If I could get my brother to be caught red-handed, he would actually go to actual prison and my life would be much more pleasant. So that's what I decided I wanted to do. I wanted to come up with a plan to get my brother into prison. I didn't have to wait long for a good opportunity to arise. The game resulted in Andy being out first, and as was his habit, he sat on the wall of Mrs. Brown's house, sulking. I said I was just going to get a drink of water, and I nipped into our garden. There was a gap in the hedge between our house and Mrs. B's, just big enough for me to nip through, knock on her front door, and disappear back through before anyone had noticed. I thought she'd be bound to think it was Andy, call the police, and then he'd be carted off to Chokey forever. Well, Father Simon, this simple plan did not work out quite as planned, but as I ran and hid, it was only later I found out the full repercussions of my plotting. True to form, Mrs. Brown came out as angry as always and spotted Andy sitting on her wall. And she did indeed think that he was the perpetrator. She obviously thought that she could box his ears or something old-fashioned because she tried to run down her path in order to catch him. Unfortunately, she had failed to see her cat, Timmy, who was asleep in the sunshine, and tripped over him. Timmy, startled... This is now going to turn into the Beano, by the way. Timmy, startled... Or Tom and Jerry. Timmy, startled from his sleep, shot through the hedge to the house on the other side where my friend Alice lived. Alice's mum was just taking their dog out. That's Jasper, a black Labrador, Timmy's biggest enemy, and they were all going out for a walk. Seeing Timmy shoot across his path, Jasper made a leap for him, barking his head off, and in the process pulling Alice's mum over. She collapsed. Timmy, by now utterly terrified, shot up the tree in their garden and refused to come down as Jasper stood guard at the bottom, barking for all he was worth. That is not all, Confessional Collective. Oh no. The fire engine had to be called to rescue Timmy, and the ambulance was needed to take Mr. Brown to the hospital because he'd fallen off the ladder watching the whole thing. This is chaos and carnage. Fortunately, the head wound was not that serious, but it did mean that Mr. Brown was at home with just Mrs. Brown for company for months. And it is for that which I need to seek forgiveness. She was always miserable and never had a kind word to say about anybody. Sorry, Mr. Brown. As for my brother Andy, he would have benefited from a spell in jail, so I'm sorry I couldn't sort that.
Oh, right, fine. Yeah.
He continued to be a thorn in my side until we both left home. This is the first time that I've told anyone about my part in setting off this chain of events that I think it's safe to say got a little out of hand, and I throw myself on the collective's mercy. I'm sure there's a few siblings that would think, yeah, I think my brother/sister would benefit with a time in prison.
I don't know. I think that's quite harsh. I think maybe
think-
she needs some sort of sibling therapy.
Do you think? What do you think? Are you going to forgive Rachel? What do you think here?
I think it's quite funny. I think, to be honest, to unleash that sort of chain of comedic events is quite impressive, whether or not it was intentional. So I wish that she'd had a smartphone of some description to video
film
it
it.
all. That would have been a YouTube viral classic.
The cat and the dog. So the old lady tripping over the cat, which triggers off the dog, and then the old man falls off the ladder while watching the whole thing.
Cat up a tree, ambulance, fire brigade.
It's Tom and Jerry all over again. What about the novice? What are you saying?
Well, I'd quite like to know what is knockdown ginger. You mentioned it as if we all should know it. Should I know
It's
it?
knock on
you
the.
know.
Is it knock on the front door
Yeah,
and run
knock
away?
on the front door and run away. Yeah,
Obviously,
you know that, Nigel.
don't try this.
I do know.
No.
Was Mrs. Brown a ginger? Oh, that makes it. No, I'm just.
I don't know. It's
What?
just.
No.
But Mr. Brown was living on the ledge and then fell off it, and he was in hospital. There was a lot going on. It sounds like a scene from Winnie the Witch. So on this occasion, Louise, I'm going to forgive you.
Okay, it's looking all right, but let's see what.
This is one of
Matthew
those
makes
instances you dream about when you're that age, that you think there's no way I'm going to be able to get this chain of events happening, and yet she does it, and it's by accident, but it happens, and you think nowadays, as you say, you'd have the phone out and you'd be sending that off to a certain TV channel and getting yourself 250 quid. So, and actually, Mr. Brown, you need to be paying attention when you're at the top of the ladder. What are you doing, looking round? Rule number 1 when you're at the top of the ladder is hang on to the ladder and don't look around. So it's his own fault. So for that reason, I am going to forgive.
You are going to forgive.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, all right. Well, they were this week's confessions. Did you forgive anybody? If you have a confession, if you have a shadowy secret of your own, maybe inspired by one of those extraordinary stories. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week, and don't forget you can now download the daily drive time shows from the iPlayer to enjoy at your leisure. You've only got a month, and then it just disappears into the ether or something. This week, our guests have been comedy actor Nick Frost, author John Boyne, and a little robotic session with Scissor Sister Animatronic. Oh yeah, and Nigel, he did a tasty dish of beef rendang for Foodie Thursday.